What's up everybody? Welcome back to Cocktail Camera. Today I'm going to be showing you some very easy, practical ways to get good lighting when you're taking photos of cocktails and beverages. I feel like a lot of photographers talk about, finding the good light. So that's essentially what we're going to do today. We're going to find that good light, whatever that is. We are working in my studio right now, which has some big west-facing windows, and it's about 11:30 a.m. and not a bright sunny day. It's a bit overcast out there. We're gonna start out just using natural light, the light that is available to us. Then from there, maybe we'll augment the natural light, we'll add in some artificial lighting and see where we go from there. We're talking cocktail photography here, so we do need a cocktail to photograph. So we have our cocktail made and we're about ready to start shooting. But the first thing I recommend doing if you are using natural daylight for your photos and you're indoors is to turn off your inside lighting. Most indoor lighting are tungsten bulbs, which are just a lot warmer than natural daylight. So if you're taking photos of something inside using light from a window, but you have lights on inside, you're gonna get two different color temperatures, one that's very cool from the daylight and one that's very warm from your indoor lighting. So just simplify things by turning off the lights. The next thing we need to do is to look for a broad source of light, which more often than not is just a big window. When using window light, generally bigger is better because the larger your light source, generally the softer the light. The next thing is to decide how we want to position our subject, which in our case is a cocktail, relative to our light source, which is our window. So I have our drink right now on a side table in my office seating area. And of course, the window is right behind it. One of my go-tos is to backlight cocktails, especially a drink like this that's spirit forward. It's actually pretty dark because of the dark vermouth in there. So I want this to stand out and not to get lost in the background at all. So I'm shooting down at our subject here from like a 45-degree angle, and then our light source, the window, isn't like directly behind the subject. It's also kind of at an angle, but still backlighting it. And what I'm doing here is kind of moving side to side until I get like a nice reflection in the surface of the cocktail. All the time, people ask me, how do you get rid of reflections when you're taking pictures of cocktails? But most of the time, I'm not trying to get rid of reflections. I'm just trying to control them to make the drink look its best, because reflections often make a drink stand out more and just gives it more dimension and depth. All right, so that's a good example of just using nice, soft, indirect light from a large window. There's no hard shadows. The light kind of wraps around our subject, and we have a nice reflection from the window in the surface of the cocktail, which makes it stand out really nicely, even though the cocktail is a bit darker in color. There's not a whole lot of natural contrast, but because of the lighting and where it's placed relative to our subject, we can make it stand out really nicely. However, we are not always shooting on a nice overcast day at 11:30 in the morning. Usually when we're shooting cocktails, it's probably later in the day anyway, when the sun might be a little lower, you might have a little more direct light. To be honest, I actually really enjoy shooting with really bright, direct light because you get those really hard, dramatic shadows, which can be difficult to deal with. But if you do it right, it can yield some really cool results. I hate waiting on the weather though. I mean, this is the 21st century. We shouldn't have to do that. This big guy is the Nanlite Forza 720. It is a beast of a light. It is a continuous light that I usually use for video, but I'm gonna use it today to imitate direct sunlight. So full disclosure, I usually use strobes or flashes when I'm taking photos, but that can be a semi-advanced topic for another day. Like I said, this is a continuous light, so most often used for video, but but also has a nice advantage when you're shooting stills because it's continuous. You can see exactly how it's gonna look. I'm gonna be using this to simulate really bright, direct sunlight. So to do that, I actually want to have the light be a lot smaller. Like I mentioned before, a large source of light, like a window, generally provides soft light, but a small source of light will just make that light a lot harder and more direct and harsh looking. This might be a little risky, but I think the rain is done for the day, so I'm gonna take this outside. Because of the skylight, I have to have it pretty far away from the window, so we might need to change this up. There we go, that's what I'm talking about. Got it right up on the window here. Apologize, the exposure is probably gonna blow out a little bit because that light is just so bright, but we're just switching windows so we can have it right on the window, just so we can simulate that bright, direct sunlight. Thanks to that Nanlite 720 out there, we basically just have this nice, beautiful beam of sunlight shining in through our window on our lovely cocktail. Just to keep this consistent, I'm shooting at a similar angle to our first set, that kind of 45-degree angle, slightly backlit. And I'm looking for similar things. I want some reflections to give the cocktail a little more dimension, but I'm also paying a little more attention to shadows because that harsh light just gives me some shadows and lines to work with. So that's also something you want to incorporate into your composition. I also want to get lower and shoot like a dramatic hero shot. This is where your little flippy out screen helps a lot if you have one. Generally, by getting down low and shooting up at your cocktail, it just gives it a more dramatic, heroic look. And that Nanlite, sunlight, working hard, giving us some nice backlight to get our cocktail to glow. Cocktail photography, we're always looking for that glow. I brought the 720 back inside and put an even more restrictive modifier on it that makes the light even smaller so that we get harder, more dramatic shadows. A smaller light source, even if it's not as bright, will just produce harder light and harder shadows. Here I'm swapping out the modifier from that very small snoot that made it like a spotlight. And now we basically have this giant window that we can move around. And just that one simple change of making the light bigger, not changing the light position or the power setting or anything, drastically changes the look of our image. Take away what you will from this video, but if I could prescribe a takeaway, it would be that there's no just one good kind of good light. Whether it's this light and airy, very soft diffused light, or maybe a harsh, direct, hard light, it really is up to you and what sort of stories you want to tell with your photography. If this video was helpful or inspiring to you in any way, please subscribe and drop me a comment. Would love to hear from you and let me know what you'd like to see next.